What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So the day is finally here. The new 8-inch Stryker Offroad lift kit for my 2023 F350 build has arrived. Now, as I'm sure many of you already know, there's not that many options out there for the 2023 F350 yet. There are some smaller lift kits available out there, but pretty much anything 6 inches or above, you're very limited. So that's why I ended up going with Stryker Offroad. They already designed an 8-inch lift kit for the 2023 Super Duty, and that's why I ended up going with them. Now be aware, a lot of these lift kits don't come with instructions, and I really haven't seen any good instructional videos on YouTube on how to install this lift kit. So stick around because I'm gonna try to figure it out on my own, and I'm gonna show you guys how it all comes out. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's get this started. Okay, so here is the lift kit here. It just showed up on the pallet. The boxes are labeled in terms of box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And then if you happen to go with the 8-inch kit or larger, you're typically gonna get the heavy duty, longer front drive shaft. Now this showed up as a drop shipment earlier than the pallet, so just be aware of that. So what we're gonna do is start unpacking all this, getting it all laid out and organized, and then we're gonna get this install started. So I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so we went ahead and we got everything taken out of all the boxes. Once you get through everything, I would recommend just laying everything out on the table and just get familiar with all of your parts. So starting over here with some of the bigger parts, here are the new radius arms here with the top plates here. As you can see, they look real good. All right, this right here is gonna be your track bar drop bracket here. These right here are gonna be your lift blocks for the rear. Here are your new longer U-bolts that are gonna go with the lift blocks there. These right here are gonna be your radius arm drop brackets here. And again, I did order these with the side milled plates here, which are additional. But the milled plating just looks really good, and I think it's gonna make the drop brackets look really good once we have everything installed. Then we got our new extended 8-inch coils here. These are the custom coil plates here that are actually gonna go on top of your coils to really just stand out and give your coils a little bit more of a custom look. Here are the shocks. So I have 4 of the regular shocks here. 2 are gonna go in the back of the truck. 2 are gonna go in the front dual steering stabilizer. Then on the front of the truck, I have the Fox shocks with reservoirs as well. And then once you get over here, this is where you start getting into a lot of the little brackets and plates. This right here is gonna be the bracket that's gonna go for your dual steering stabilizer in the front. Here's your new extended drop pitman arm here. Here's your extended end links here. And then it looks like it has a little bracket here that's gonna go in the front of the actual dual steering stabilizer. And then you're gonna have a couple bags of hardware that are all labeled. Okay, just like that. So again, when it comes to packaging, the packaging is done really, really well. When it comes to the quality, everything is top-notch, high quality. Now, another thing I want to mention, this kit does not come with instructions on how to install it. I called Stryker, I verified this. So for a lot of people out there that install lift kits on a regular basis and they're very familiar with all of these parts, this is probably gonna be easier for them. For the majority of people out there that have never installed a lift kit by themselves, it could be a little bit tricky. And the same goes for me. This will be the first time I am installing a lift kit of this magnitude by myself in my own driveway. Now, the third thing I wanna mention is that I found this out after the fact, is that you will need to get a 1/2-inch tap and drill set like this, but you're gonna need this one right here, which is a 2764 drill bit, and then it comes with a 1/2-inch self-aligning tap bit right here. So you're gonna need that. I didn't have one, so I had to go to the store and buy one. But you're gonna need this right here for when you're installing your drop brackets here, which I think would be this hole over here. But we'll get to that here in a little while. But overall, that's everything that comes with the kit. So tomorrow morning, the first thing we're gonna do is get the truck jacked up, take off the wheels, and we're gonna start taking off some of the parts so that we can start putting these new parts on. So stay tuned because we're gonna be right back tomorrow morning and we're gonna get this install started. Okay, so I'm just gonna start with the front of the truck first. I'll worry about the back here later. So what I did was I just jacked the truck up for now, and I got some jack stands under the back frames behind the radius arms because we're gonna have to work on those radius arms here soon. I went ahead and just took my jack with a wood block under the front axle and just have the axle sitting on the jack for now, just to take a little bit of pressure off of the other parts. The next thing I want to do is come under here on both sides and loosen up the brake line bracket right here, because when we start to drop the axle down, okay, you want to make sure that this bracket is not attached, because that way it'll give you some slack on both sides for when we drop the axle down to remove our springs. Okay, so I went ahead and I removed my bottom valance here just because it's a very big valance, and I just wanted to get rid of it for now just so I have some additional space to work under here. I'm going to come up under here and I'm going to start working on my track bar bracket. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this big large bolt out. It's going to be tough, so you're going to probably need a breaker bar, and then we'll just drop the track bar down. Then we're going to go in here and then start taking out the bolts to get the factory track bar bracket removed. But to give yourself a little bit of room, it's probably best to just remove the sway bar out of the way, or at least disconnect it from these end links here and drop it down to give yourself a little bit of room, because we're going to be replacing the end links here anyways. So let me start working on that and we'll be right back. Okay, so we went ahead and we got the factory track bar bracket removed. If you come up under here, again, there's going to be the 3 bolts that are in the back over here, and then there's just going to be the 2 that are right here and right over there. Now we need to go in here and actually take the pitman arm out so that we can go ahead and install our new extended pitman arm. So let me start working on that. We got to take this bolt off and take this big nut off here. If I can't seem to get the pitman arm off, I'll have to use a puller, but I'll show you that here in a minute. So let me work on that and I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back and we just got the linkage removed from the pitman arm. And to do that, you are going to need a pitman arm puller, just like this. It just slides over top like that, and then there's this little rod in the middle that you use a wrench, and as you crank the wrench, the rod pushes the pitman arm out, which is what you're going to need to use. The next thing I have to do is get my pitman arm nut taken off, which again is also very hard to do. And to do that, I have this gigundous socket here. It's a power built CRV 46, and then I just have a reducer sleeve, and then that is what we're going to stick on top of that nut, and we're going to try to crank that off. So let me keep working on that and we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm having a little bit of trouble getting the pitman arm off. Again, I got the bottom part taken off, but my pitman arm puller was too small for the top. So I called around a couple of my local auto parts stores, and luckily I found one that had a heavy duty pitman arm puller like this. And you could buy these online yourself for around $80 to $90. But my local Napa store had one of these available for rent. So it cost me $100 to rent it. And then when I return it, I get my $100 back. So if you're running into an issue needing a heavy duty pitman arm puller for a large pitman arm like this, definitely make sure you check out your local auto parts stores and see if you could rent one like this. So I'm going to hook this up and see how it goes. I'll be right back. Okay, so we finally got the factory pitman arm off. This was a big pain in the butt, but I will say, this heavy duty pitman arm puller worked out great. So instead of playing around with all the different smaller sizes, if you're able to just get a heavy duty pitman arm puller like this, just rent it from your local auto parts store if they have one. This tool right here will get both ends of your pitman arm removed and you'll be good to go. So the next thing I want to do is get up here and install the Stryker track bar lowering bracket. So we're going to do that next. I'll be right back in a minute. So what I'm doing now is I'm just torquing down the pitman arm nut to 200 foot-pounds of torque. And we are good. Okay, so we got everything hooked up. We got the pitman arm all hooked up. I got the retaining nut installed with some blue Loctite, and I got that torqued down to spec. Before you actually take the factory pitman arm off, I would recommend coming up under here with a marker or a white crayon or something and just marking a little notch here on the actual steering box over here, and then directly below it, mark a little notch up here on the factory pitman arm. That way, when you take the factory pitman arm off, you can lay it up against the new drop pitman arm here, and then you can line up the mark that you originally made, and then just come down and mark the same notch on the new pitman arm. That way, when you put the new drop pitman arm back on, you can line it up in the same exact position that you took the factory one off. And then I got the track bar hooked up here. I got the long bolts blue Loctited and mounted back in, and then the 3 bolts right over there. So again, everything is blue Loctited and torqued down the spec. Okay, so now to get your steering linkage hooked back up to the bottom of the pitman arm, because we're going with a larger lift with a drop pitman arm, typically your steering linkage is no longer going to mount from the top, it's going to mount from the bottom. So what you have to do is over here, what I did was I just loosened these bolts right here just so I can turn my steering linkage. Then I ended up adjusting it a little bit shorter so that it fits in the bottom of my pitman arm. Then once I put my bolt in and tighten it down, with everything looking relatively straight, my steering wheel is relatively straight as well. So that's what we're going for. Now, after all of this is said and done, you typically want to take your truck to an alignment shop and have them realign your wheels. Then you're going to have to remove the factory steering linkage shock. So you no longer can use this steering linkage shock. You're going to remove it and set it to the side. And because I'm going with a new dual steering stabilizer with a dual shock, that's another reason you don't need that shock over there. The next thing I want to do is start working on taking off my shocks on both sides. And I do have my jack supporting the axle, because once you remove these shocks, your axle can technically just drop. That's why we want to make sure we loosen our brake line brackets here. So let me keep working on this and I'll be right back. I just tie a little rope like this because once you drop the axle and these springs come falling out, the last thing I want them to do is actually fall out and start banging all over the ground and breaking something else. So now they're safe. Now I can go ahead, disconnect my rope, take out my shocks, and then we'll go ahead and start putting in the new shocks. So the next thing you want to do is take your top puck off right here. We're going to put that in the new shocks and we're going to get everything installed. So I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so here's where we're at so far. This is not easy, guys. I just want to say, doing an 8-inch lift in your driveway with basic tools, this is very difficult. But I got some of the hoses disconnected and I ended up disconnecting my steering linkage and I ended up dropping my axle literally to the ground and trying to jack up the center of the truck as high as I possibly can. And then I had to use some ratchet straps on the coils to try to compress them like an inch or two. And then when I stuck them in there, I had to release the ratchet strap for them to spring back into place. So I got the front driver's side done, the passenger side's done. Now the next thing I'm gonna do is start jacking back up the axle. Everything's seated in the position that it needs to be at the bottom, because the very end of the coil at the bottom seats into a position on the bottom axle hub there. And on the rubber gasket at the top, there's a little seated position for the end of the hook to grab there. I have it all in place, so let me start jacking this up and we'll see how it goes. I'll be right back. Okay, so this is where we're at so far. It is getting late in the day and I have some other errands I have to run. I wasted a little bit of time today running back and forth to the store, buying parts that I needed. But because this kit doesn't come with instructions, I didn't really know exactly what all I needed. So right now the front coils are on, the front shocks are on, the new track bar drop bracket is on, the new pitman arm is on. I do have the steering linkage hooked up to the pitman arm and I do have the track bar hooked up as well. I still have to add my end links to the sway bar, get those hooked up. I have to strap in a couple more hoses that I unstrapped to give me some clearance. I have to put my brake line relocation brackets on. And then tomorrow we're gonna get up bright and early and we're gonna start tackling the radius arm drop brackets and the radius arms. But so far I'm pretty happy with what I got done today. The front of the vehicle is probably the hardest to get done. So tomorrow we're gonna work on the rest. Okay, so I got the first radius arm removed over on the driver's side and I'm working on hooking up the radius arm drop bracket. So what you want to do is pretty much just set it up in place with the nameplate facing the driver's side and then install your large bolt with the big metal sleeve in the middle hole. Towards the front, there's going to be a top hole, the middle hole, and a bottom hole. The bottom hole is where your radius arm attaches to. Because what we have to do is shift this up against the bottom. And real quick, I did have to take off this bottom plate that was sitting right here. So I took that metal plate off and then this radius arm slides right up into place. And then what you need to do is, because there's a hole right here, you're gonna have to get like a marker or a crayon and mark your hole up here, wherever that hole lines up. And then that's when we're going to have to drill and tap. We're gonna have to go ahead and use this and drill a hole, and then we're gonna have to tap it. Now, if you don't happen to have a handle for your actual tap, you're gonna need to buy something like this, which has these little threads in the middle that holds this tap right here at the bottom. And then what you do is you just twist it in, hold it. It's kind of like a T-handle. So you basically are twisting it clockwise, a half, and then you go back a quarter. And then you do another half, and go back a quarter. The reason you go back a quarter is because any of the metal shavings that you're digging out, you go back a quarter, it moves the metal shavings out of the way, and then you go forward again. So let me start with marking the hole, and then we're gonna drill it and tap it, and then we're gonna get our first radius arm bracket installed, and then we're gonna start working on our first radius arm. Okay, so I already started getting the tap installed, but basically this is what you wanna do. You wanna turn it about a half a turn or so. It'll be a little bit tight, and then back off about a quarter, okay? And then go another half a turn, back off a quarter. And you'll start to hear and feel some of the shavings falling out, and just keep doing that. And then once you get in far enough, it'll go all the way. Okay. Okay. We are good. So the big bolt that comes with a washer and then a lock washer with no nut, that's the thick bolt that's going to go into this hole that we just tapped. Now the tricky part is getting this bolt up inside the radius arm bracket and then getting a tool in there to tighten it down, but I'll figure it out. So let me go ahead and get this part mounted up into its position. And as always, I always recommend use some blue Loctite on these threads to hold it in position better. I'll be right back. Okay, so we got the radius arm installed. Now, the hardest part of the whole radius arm is getting up under here to that bolt right there. Because once you tap it to your frame, you're gonna have to put that bolt up in there. Then just take your wrench from the back side, like underneath the truck, come up under here, and you can get it right there, and you're just gonna have to tighten it down that way. So that worked for me, so we're all good to go. So now all the bolts are in nice and tight, everything's blue Loctited. That's what you want it to look like. Again, your big bolt here in the second hole, because the first hole at the bottom is for your radius arm. The second hole is your big bolt with the big metal sleeve. You're gonna have the slightly thicker bolt here with a washer and nut on here, and then the slightly thinner bolt here. Everything is tightened down and everything is blue Loctited, so we are good to go. Okay guys, and real quick, these spacers right here, there's a thicker one and then a thinner one. These go between your radius arm drop brackets and your factory radius arm brackets here. The thinner bracket is gonna go on the inside of the truck right here, and then the thicker bracket is gonna go right here on the outside of the Stryker radius arm drop bracket. So I forgot to do this at first, so I'm just dropping the radius arm back down to slide them back between there so that you're not bending or pushing the Stryker radius arm drop bracket into this empty pocket here. These spacers here create a nice solid mount. So I just wanted to let you know to do that first before you make the mistake I did and have to go back and do it later. Okay, so here's an update so far. I ended up putting my wheels back on in the front just because I don't have enough jacks to keep everything jacked up. But we went ahead and we got the coils put on, so that wasn't too bad. We got the Stryker plate across the top. We got our Fox shocks and reservoirs mounted top and bottom. Okay, real quick, as far as the brake line relocation brackets here, they're pretty simple to install. Again, in the very beginning of this install, you're going to take the bolt out up top to disconnect your brake line bracket from up top. And then what you're going to do is just mount in the Stryker brake line relocation bracket, which drops the mounting position from up here down to here. So then at the bottom of this bracket, there's going to be two holes. You can kind of adjust that however you want. I don't think there's any specific way to do it because there's no instructions that tells you how. And I couldn't even get anybody to really confirm this. But all I did was just kind of shift the factory bracket here into a position to where I can put a bolt in from the back and put a little blue Loctite on it and put the nut on the front and mount it there nice and sturdy. So now the factory bracket that holds your brake lines is actually bolted to the Stryker relocation bracket there to keep the brake lines out of the way and away from the coils. So I went ahead and did that on both sides. Again, you might have to make a few adjustments and bend things into position to fit, but that's basically all I did there. Let's come under here. We have our radius arm drop brackets installed and we have our radius arms installed. And real quick, just make sure when you're bolting down the bottom bolt of your radius arm, you want to make sure this little cam is seated inside this weld box there on both sides. Okay, just like that. Because again, these cams in here are kind of off-centered a little bit, so they might not fill in the weld box. They're actually meant to rotate a little bit to adjust your axle. So just make sure these little round cams here are not sitting on the outside of this weld box. They have to be inside the weld box like that on both sides, and everything should line up pretty good. Come across to the passenger side. Again, same thing, coils, nameplate at the top, shocks with reservoirs. Got a radius arm drop bracket there installed, and got the radius arm installed. Everything's going good there. Got my track bar all tightened down. Now there are these offset cams here that have a nice weld box that the cams fit inside. You want the hole opening closer to the passenger side. That way you have this excess metal right here showing. That's how they want you to actually install it there. As far as the dual steering stabilizer goes, the first problem I had is that they must have accidentally forgot to give me the hardware package for the dual steering stabilizer. So instead of waiting a week for them to ship me a new bag, I just went online, looked up this kit and looked up the hardware that you're supposed to have. And then I ran to my local hardware store and I bought all the bolts. But it's really not that hard to install. All you're going to do is take these two bolts out right here off your front differential cover, these two bolts here. Take those out. You're going to put your main plate up against it, put your bolts back in, holding it there. Then you're going to have your front bracket here with a back bracket on the back, and you're going to bolt everything down there around your axle. That's going to keep your center hardware plate stable. Then at the ends, you're going to go ahead. I still have to tighten everything down, but you're going to go ahead and put your bottom bracket with your top bracket, bolt all that down, and then you're going to just bolt down your shocks here in the middle with the Stryker nameplate. So I do have to go back through and tighten all that up, but so far everything went good there. The only issue that I'm having right now is that they say that there's no drop brackets for your sway bar, which is why they give you these extended sway bar end links. The problem is, at least for now, my sway bar is hitting the coils, so I feel like there needs to be some type of a drop bracket here. So I emailed them. I'm waiting on an answer of what to do with my sway bar brackets here. So we'll find out what's going on with that. But again, that's the problems we're dealing with here, because this kit doesn't come with instructions. So when you're running into little issues along the way, there's nothing to refer back to. So I got to keep emailing them and waiting for the response. But the kit itself is high quality and it looks really good. It's just installation is a headache because there are no instructions. So the next thing I have to work on is replacing the front drive shaft, which I've already disconnected from up here. I just have to disconnect it from the back, but I don't know if I have a socket. If not, I might have to go to the store and buy a socket that fits those. But I got to take that off so that I can put the new one on. And I did take the existing axle out right here, which here's the problem I'm having there. My existing axle had the threaded holes right here. This new axle, if we look here, doesn't have any threads. So because the new axle doesn't have threads at the end, my factory bolts don't work. And being that there's no instructions with this kit and there's no additional hardware with this kit, I had to also call Stryker on this one and find out what's going on. Are these supposed to be threaded holes, or am I supposed to just get longer bolts and run bolts with lock nuts and washers? Okay, so we got the drive shaft fixed. I had to run to the store and buy new 12mm bolts. I got them just a little bit longer so that I could fit some washers and lock washers and bigger lock nuts at the end. And then I used blue Loctite on everything, so everything's tightened down nice and tight. I have the front hooked up over here, so everything's good to go there. I got all my hoses zip tied out of the way and bracketed out of the way, so we're good to go with that. And they're going to actually drop ship me a set of extended drop brackets for my sway bar, which will take this front bracket here, pull it down and forward a little bit, which will pull this out here away from the coil, and then we should be good to go on that. But again, I knew this was going to be a difficult install, doing it by myself in my driveway with limited tools. But we got most of the front done, so we're just going to take a break from that today. But today we're going to focus on the back. So what I need to do is take the back wheels off, jack it up. We're going to remove the U-bolts off the back. We're going to put the new lift blocks in. We're going to put the new U-bolts on and hopefully be able to put the new tires on and get this thing level again. So let me start working on that real quick and we'll be right back. Okay, so we went ahead and we got the wheels off. We got the back of the truck jacked up, and I have double jacks on both sides for support. And then I'll just keep my jack under the back axle so that when we take the U-bolt pack off right here, there's this U-bolt here, this U-bolt here. When we take those off on both sides, we can actually lower the axle using the jack. That way we can get to our lift blocks. So let me go ahead and work on that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so everything's going pretty good in the back. Again, the back is always much easier than the front. The front, there is a lot to do. The back's pretty simple. So basically all you have to do is after you jack it up, take your wheels off, you need to take the 4 nuts off the factory U-bolts here, pull those out. You're gonna adjust the height of your axle so that you can actually get the factory block out. Then you're gonna have to drop the axle back down so that you can put the larger lift block in here. And again, it only goes in one way. It's canted a little bit from high in the back, low to the front, just a little bit to keep your axle rotated down so that your drive shaft is at a better angle. And then there's going to be a flange here that sticks off towards the center of the truck for your bump stops to hit. So there's really only one way to mount them. There is a peg in the middle that goes up into this little hole up here, and then there's a little hole down here the peg sits in down there. So once you get it lined up, you just have to adjust your jack to get everything to compress and line up in place. Drop your U-bolts in, put your nuts on. Now down here, this mounting plate right here, okay, that was factory, I did have to bore out the holes just a tad bit because these bolts here are thicker than the factory U-bolts. So I just had to bore those holes out a little bit. But once you open those up just a tad, the bolts slide right in, you bolt them down, and then we got our shocks mounted in, up at the top, down at the bottom. Now to make this a little easier for me, because I don't have a lift, I'm just using jacks, I had to take the rear sway bar off from the axle and I swung it up under so that I had more room to work with here, dropping the axle and lifting it back up. So now everything's done on both sides. I just have to bring my sway bar back around, clamp it on, and then we should be good to put wheels on. So let me work on that and we'll be right back. Okay, so we got the back all done. Let's go back here and check it out. Got all my mess of tools over here, but that's what it looks like there. Again, the lift blocks are in there. The shocks are in there. Everything looks good. We're good to go there. So yeah, that looks real good. So far the truck looks pretty level from back to front. It doesn't look like it's squatting or anything like that. So again, so far everything is done in the front. I mean, the truck has a really nice stance to it. I was a little bit worried that the 24x12 and the 37x13.5-inch tires were going to look a little too small. I actually don't think they look too bad. Yeah, there's a little bit more gap in the wheel well, but it shows a little bit more of the fancy stuff behind it, which I like too. Being able to see the Stryker track bar bracket, the big coil, the Fox shocks, it just gives it a nice custom look. Now again, I purchased these wheels months before I got the lift kit because I thought I was going to get a 6-inch lift kit. But at the last minute, I ended up switching to an 8-inch lift kit. That's why I was worried about how the wheels were gonna look. But honestly, the wheels really don't look bad. I think I'm just gonna rock these for a little while. Now, when these tires wear out, maybe next year or something like that, maybe I'll move up to a 38-inch tire. Who knows what the future might hold, but for now, I think these actually look pretty good, and they really gives the truck a really good stance. They look good from the front. Again, if you see here, they do stick out a little bit wider, give it a nice little bit of a wider stance. Again, for my daily driver truck, I didn't want to go as big on this truck as I did on my last truck. But on this build, I wanted to go high, but I just didn't want to go as high and as big. But so far, everything's coming along. Okay, so real quick, Stryker did go ahead and verify I need a set of drop brackets for my sway bar. So they actually overnighted them to me, and I just got them. It is late at night. I just got home from work. But we got to go ahead and put these on tonight because tomorrow I have an appointment to take my truck up to the dealership so that I could get my alignment done. But tonight, we got to get under there and get those sway bar drop brackets put on. So let me start working on that, and we'll be right back. Okay, so putting these on should be pretty simple and easy. The open-ended area here is going to face the inside of the truck. So it's basically going to sit like this. And these top bolts here are going to mount to the frame. So it's going to drop the factory mounting location down and forward, which is what we're going to need to clear those coils. So let me go ahead and start putting these on, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we got the new drop brackets put on for the sway bar. That's what it looks like right there. It did bring my sway bar down and forward just a little bit, But as you can see here, my sway bar end link here is still touching the coil. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this all out. But again, these are some of the issues that some people don't talk about, but I'm here to tell you that, you know, when you're lifting a truck that's not meant to be lifted, you might run into some issues. But I'm going to have to take it to the dealership. We'll get it aligned and we'll see what happens from there. So I'll be back here shortly. Okay, so here we are. So we're driving the truck to the dealership tonight because we're going to drop it off and they're going to do the alignment tomorrow morning. But how I got it to drive is I put the stock end links back on, and that gave me a lot more clearance so that the end links and the sway bar was not touching the coils. But as you can see here, these are some of the faults showing on the dash. There's a parking brake fault. There's pre-collision assist fault, service advanced track fault. So pretty much just a bunch of electronic faults, which should be taken care of once we get this truck aligned. And then tomorrow when the dealership's all done, we'll go pick the truck up, see how everything looks then. We'll be right back tomorrow when we pick the truck up. Okay, so we're in the truck and we're just driving on some back roads here real quick. I have the windows down so you can kind of hear if there's any kind of noise, or maybe you can hear, if possible, the sound of the tires on the road, which are pretty quiet in my opinion. But again, this is what it looks like. 8-inch lift kit, 37-inch tires on a 2023 F350 long bed. Drives nice. Again, steering wheel drives pretty straight. Again, all of the fault codes that I had on the dash were all pretty much related to the wheel speed sensor, which I did fix. The only code I still have down there is one of my sensors in my aftermarket wheels doesn't seem to be registering, so I'll have to look into that, but that really shouldn't be anything major. But yeah, everything looks pretty good. It drives nice, turns good, drives good. I can't complain. You can sort of hear the tires on the road if you actually pay attention and listen for them. Let me see if you can hear it now. It's kind of hard to hear because of the wind. It's a very windy day here in Western Pennsylvania, but they're not bad. I mean, I've had larger wheels that sounded louder on the road, but these new 37 by 13.5-inch Patriot off-road tires are really not that bad. They're not that noisy. They drive nice. They don't drive rough on the road. So I'm pretty happy with them so far. I mean, I could get up over 60, 70 miles per hour and not feel any wheel shaking. So they seem to be well balanced as well. Now my tires are actually weight balanced, not bead balanced, but I ordered them that way. But I think that if you're around a 35 or 37-inch tire, you could get away with weights. But if you're any larger, I always recommend going with bead balancing. But they actually drive pretty good. But overall, this Stryker 8-inch radius arm lift kit on my 2023 F350, it rides great. I actually think that the F350 rides pretty solid with this Stryker lift kit compared to when I had my Ram 2500 Cummins on an 8-inch McGoy's lift kit. This lift kit seems to ride better, but it could just be because the suspension setup on this F350 is different from the 4-coil suspension system set up on a Ram 2500. But again, this truck here drives pretty straight, drives solid. I feel like it's very simple and easy to navigate. You do sit up a lot higher, so you get a little bit of a better field of view. It's not so bad that you really can't see cars in front of you when you're at a stoplight or something like that. But I think this 8-inch lift kit on 37s or maybe even 38s is the perfect lift kit. It looks awesome, it gets a lot of attention, but it's that perfect balance to where it's not so overwhelming for a daily driver. Okay, so I just pulled in my driveway real quick and I parked sideways so you can get a better side view shot of how the truck looks with an 8-inch lift kit on 37-inch tires. Now these are the hardcore wheels in a 24 by 12 wide. That's what they look like there. I really like this milled look. Really looks good. Put some black spiked lug nuts on there. Turned out awesome. The tires are from Patriot. These are a 37 by 13.5 tire. So they have a nice tread lock to them. Nice beefy tread lock, but they drive really good. I actually think it's kind of cool. They have these little skulls on the side lugs. Looks really cool. But yeah, that's what it looks like. So that right there is the 2023 F350 high output diesel long bed with the Stryker 8-inch radius arm lift kit paired with 24 by 12 inch wheels on 37 by 13.5 inch tires. But as you can see here, it looks pretty awesome. The radius arms and drop bracket look really cool. You get a little closer here. That's what they look like right there. And what's also pretty cool with this lift kit is eventually I could get the floating cradle in the middle that kind of connects right here in the middle in this gap area here underneath the truck. And then I could go ahead and get the Stryker long tubes that will attach to the center cradle and go all the way to the back, which will give it a little bit more stability and a lot more of a custom look. But so far, I am really loving this Stryker 8-inch lift kit on this truck. I always wanted an F350, and I've been wanting an 8-foot bed because I really just want the extra bed space for storage and other things. But I just love how big this truck looks. I mean, it is a big truck. So if you look here, I mean, my head is at the actual mirror here, and I'm 6'3". So I'm a pretty tall guy. So this lift kit gives you that perfect balance of the wow factor that you want out of a lift kit. Plenty of ground clearance, looks awesome. It gets a ton of attention, but it's very manageable and easy to drive as a daily driver. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That right there is how you install a lift kit in your driveway. Is it easy? No. I will say that. This is the first time I attempted installing a lift kit by myself with basic tools at home in my driveway. It was not fun at all, but to be completely honest, most of it was not that bad. The hardest part is getting the truck lifted high enough so that you could drop your axles low enough to get the coils in. But if you don't have the basic knowledge and the basic tools, obviously you're probably going to have to take that lift kit to a professional to have installed, and they're probably going to charge you $1,500 to $2,000 to install it. But I felt pretty confident that I could do it myself. Like I said before, do I recommend everybody doing this? No, it's not easy. But if you have the basic knowledge and the basic tools to get it done, why not give it a try and save some money? But at the end of the day, the only issue I had is somehow or another, I ended up damaging my wheel speed sensor. But again, I replaced that. Very simple and easy to do. If you want to see how to do it, I'll put a link to that video in the description of this video. But other than that, everything went good and I'm really happy with it. So that's going to be it for today's video. I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button to like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. But that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate all of your support. And as always, see you in the next video.